In the kingdom of Thornevale, where tall mountains circled the land like silent guardians, there lived a girl named Elara. She was 17 years old, with soft brown eyes and hair the color of autumn leaves. But no one at the castle ever looked at her long enough to notice these things. To them, she was only a servant, the lowest servant of all. Elara had come to the castle as a small child. Her parents had died when she was very young, and no one could tell her much about them. All she knew was that she had been left at the castle gates one cold morning, wrapped in a thin blanket, with nothing but her name. The head housekeeper, a stern woman named Mistress Greta, had never liked Elara. She gave the girl the hardest tasks and the smallest meals. Worst of all, she refused to give Elara a proper room. So each night, Elara slept in the royal stables, curled up in the warm straw beside the great horses. Strangely, Elara did not mind the stables as much as one might think. The horses were gentle with her. They nuzzled her hands and rested their heads against her shoulder. In the quiet of the night, when the other servants laughed and slept in their warm beds, the horses were her only friends. "You understand me, don't you?" she would whisper to them. "You do not care that my dress is torn, or that my hands are rough from work. You only care that I am kind." And she was kind. Elara shared her small pieces of bread with the stable cats. She sang soft songs to calm the nervous colts. She never spoke a cruel word, even when others were cruel to her. Life went on this way for many years. Elara grew used to being invisible. She believed that this was simply how her life would always be. She had no dreams of grand things. She only hoped, quietly, that one day someone might look at her and truly see her. She did not know that everything was about to change. One evening, news spread through the castle like fire. The Alpha King was returning home. King Darius Blackthorn had been away for a very long time, traveling across distant lands. He was young, strong, and powerful, and all the people both admired and feared him. But there was something more. In Thornevale, the royal family carried an ancient gift. They could sense their one true partner, their fated mate, by a special bond that could not be explained by ordinary means. It was said that when a king found his mate, he would know her at once, deep in his heart, and nothing in the world could break that bond. King Darius had searched for his mate for years. He had traveled to faraway kingdoms, meeting many noble ladies, but none of them were the one. Now he was returning home, tired and without hope, believing perhaps that he would never find her. The castle burst into action. Servants scrubbed the floors until they shone. Cooks prepared great feasts. The nobles put on their finest clothes and jewels, hoping to catch the king's eye. Everyone was busy and excited. Everyone except Elara. "You will stay out of sight," Mistress Greta told her sharply. "The king must not see a ragged girl like you. Go to the stables and remain there until the celebrations are over." Elara nodded quietly, and did as she was told. She spent the whole day cleaning the stables, brushing the horses, and preparing them in case the king wished to ride. By evening, she was very tired. The work had been long and hard. As the sky turned dark and the stars began to shine, Elara sat down in her usual corner of straw. The horses breathed softly around her. The air was warm and calm. Slowly, without meaning to, she drifted off to sleep, her head resting against the wooden wall. Far away in the great hall, the celebrations had begun. King Darius sat upon his throne, surrounded by nobles who bowed and smiled and tried to win his favor. But the king felt empty. All this grandness meant nothing to him. His heart still ached with loneliness. After some time, he grew tired of the noise. He stood up quietly and slipped away from the hall, wishing to be alone. He walked through the castle halls and out into the cool night air. Without thinking, his feet carried him toward the stables. He had always loved horses, and their company felt more honest than the company of nobles. But as he came near the stables, something happened. King Darius stopped suddenly, as if an invisible hand had touched his heart. A strange feeling rushed through him, powerful and warm. His breath caught in his chest. It was the bond, the fated bond he had searched for all his life. It was here. It was close. His heart pounded as he stepped inside the stables. His eyes searched every corner, and then he saw her. There, in the soft straw, a young girl lay sleeping. Her hair was spread gently around her face. Her hands, though rough from work, were folded peacefully. A small kitten slept curled against her side. She looked calm and gentle, like a flower that had bloomed in a forgotten place. King Darius could not move. His whole being told him the truth at once. This girl, this simple servant sleeping in the stable, was his fated mate, the one his soul had been searching for. He knelt down slowly beside her, hardly able to believe it. "It is you," he whispered. "After all this time, it is truly you." At the sound of his voice, Ilara stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, and when she saw the tall man kneeling beside her, dressed in fine royal clothes, fear filled her heart. She scrambled backward, pressing herself against the wall. "Please forgive me," she cried. "I did not mean any harm. I only fell asleep. Please do not punish me." King Darius shook his head gently. "You have done nothing wrong," he said softly. "Do not be afraid. I would never harm you." But Ilara was still trembling. "You are the king," she whispered. "I am only a servant. I should not even be near you." Darius looked at her with wonder in his eyes. "You are far more than a servant," he said. "You are the one I have searched for my entire life." Before Ilara could understand his words, the sound of footsteps filled the air. The nobles had noticed the king's absence and had come looking for him. Now a crowd gathered at the stable door, holding torches, their faces full of surprise. "Your Majesty," one noble gasped, "what are you doing here with this ragged girl?" The nobles began to whisper among themselves. Their eyes filled with scorn as they looked at Ilara, dirty and frightened in the straw. "A stable girl," one lady sneered. "Surely the king cannot be interested in her." "She is nothing," another muttered. "She has no name, no family, no place among us." Ilara lowered her head in shame, wishing she could disappear. She was used to their cruel words, but hearing them now, in front of the king, hurt more than ever before. King Darius rose to his feet. His face was calm, but his eyes were like fire. He turned to face the crowd of nobles. "You call her nothing," he said, his voice deep and strong. "You look upon her with scorn? Then hear me well, all of you." The nobles fell silent, sensing the power in his words. "This girl," said the king, taking Ilara's hand gently, "is my fated mate. She is the one my heart has chosen. From this moment on, she is your future queen. She is your Luna." Gasps filled the air. The nobles stared in shock. Ilara herself could hardly breathe. She stared up at the king, unable to believe what she was hearing. But the nobles did not move. They stood frozen, their faces full of doubt and disgust. They did not want to accept a servant girl as their queen. King Darius saw their hesitation. His voice grew even stronger. "You do not believe she is worthy," he said. "Then I will teach you her worth. Every noble here will kneel before her, now." For a long moment no one moved. The nobles glanced at one another, their pride battling against the command of their king. But the power in his voice could not be denied. Slowly, one by one, the proud nobles began to kneel. The fine ladies in their silk gowns and the lords in their jeweled coats lowered themselves to the ground before the girl who had slept in the straw. The whole crowd bowed their heads. Ilara looked around in amazement. Tears filled her eyes. Never in her life had anyone shown her respect. And now the highest people in the kingdom were kneeling before her. King Darius turned to her and smiled gently. "You will never sleep in a stable again," he said. "From now on, your place is by my side." The days that followed were like a dream to Ilara. She was given a beautiful room in the castle, filled with soft cushions and warm blankets. She was dressed in fine gowns and given proper meals. The servants who had once been cruel to her now treated her with great care, for they feared the king's anger. But not everyone was pleased. Among the nobles, there was a lady named Duchess Vivienne. She was beautiful and clever, and for many years she had hoped to marry King Darius and become queen herself. When she saw a simple servant take the place she had wanted, jealousy filled her heart. "That girl does not belong here," Vivienne whispered to her friends. "She is a fraud. We must find a way to send her back to the stables where she belongs." Vivienne began to spread rumors. She told the other nobles that Elara was a thief, that she had tricked the king with witchcraft, that she was hiding some terrible secret. Slowly, doubt began to creep through the castle. Elara, who was gentle and unused to such cruelty, felt the weight of these whispers. She often wondered whether she truly belonged in the castle. At night, she would look out her window and feel afraid. King Darius noticed her sadness. "What troubles you?" he asked her one evening. Elara lowered her eyes. "The nobles do not want me here," she said quietly. "Perhaps they are right. I am only a servant. I do not know how to be a queen." Darius took her hands in his. "Listen to me," he said. "A true queen is not made by fine clothes or noble birth. A true queen is made by a kind heart, a brave spirit, and a gentle soul. You have all of these things. You are more worthy than any noble in this kingdom." His words gave Elara strength. She began to hold her head a little higher. She started to learn the ways of the court, and though it was difficult, she never gave up. Her kindness slowly won the hearts of many servants, and even some of the nobles. But Duchess Vivienne would not stop. Her jealousy had grown into something dark. One evening, she planned to harm Elara during a grand feast, hoping to remove her forever. Yet fate had other plans. On the night of the feast, an old woman arrived at the castle gates. She was traveling from a distant village and asked to speak with the king. When she was brought before him, she looked upon Elara and gasped. "It cannot be," the old woman whispered. "You have your mother's eyes." Everyone in the hall turned to listen. The old woman explained that she had once served a noble family from a faraway land. Years ago, that family had been in great danger, and to protect their only child, they had sent her away in secret. That child had been left at the gates of Thornvale Castle, wrapped in a thin blanket, with nothing but her name. "You are that child," the old woman said, tears in her eyes. "You are not a common servant. You are the last daughter of a noble and ancient bloodline. Royal blood runs in your veins." The hall fell silent in shock. Elara could hardly believe her ears. All her life she had thought she was nothing. Now she learned that she came from a noble family, hidden away to keep her safe. The nobles who had doubted her now stared in wonder. The rumors Vivienne had spread crumbled to dust, and Vivienne herself, seeing her plans destroyed, fled the hall in shame, never to return to a place of honor again. But the greatest change was in Elara herself. She realized that her worth had never depended on her birth. Whether servant or noble, she had always been kind, brave, and true. The revelation of her bloodline did not make her better. It only helped others finally see what had been there all along. King Darius took her hand and smiled. "Do you see now?" he said. "Your worth was never in question, not to me." In the weeks that followed, preparations began for a grand celebration. At last, the day arrived when Elara was to be crowned Luna Queen of Thornvale. The whole kingdom gathered to witness it. Elara stood in the great hall, dressed in a gown of shining silver. Her hair was woven with flowers, but her true beauty came from within, from the gentle strength that shone in her eyes. As the crown was placed upon her head, the entire kingdom bowed before her. But this time, they did not bow out of fear. They bowed out of true respect and love. The girl who had once slept in the straw now stood as their queen. Elara looked out at the crowd, her heart full. She thought of all the lonely nights in the stable, the cruel words, the loneliness. And she realized that all of it had led her here. King Darius stood beside her, holding her hand. "You have come a long way," he said softly. "I have," Elara answered, smiling. "But I have not forgotten where I came from, and I never will." From that day on, Queen Elara ruled with kindness and wisdom. She remembered what it was like to be forgotten, and so she cared deeply for the poor and the humble. She made sure that no servant in her castle would ever have to sleep in a cold stable again. The horses she had once loved were given the finest care, and often she would visit them, resting her head against their soft necks, just as she had done long ago. And so the story of the stable girl who became a queen was told across the land for many generations. It reminded all who heard it of a simple but powerful truth. True worth is not measured by wealth or birth or fine clothes. It is measured by the goodness in one's heart. And no matter how forgotten a person may feel, dignity and kindness will always find their way into the light.